My name is John Pasfield, and I'm going to read from my Macbeth novel in a moment. This will be Macbeth Video 4, his complete duet duel. But first, the novel itself. The novel is Lord and Lady Macbeth, Full of Scorpions is My Mind, a novel by John Pasfield. I'll read from the back cover, which is a summary of the novel. Lord and Lady Macbeth are being stung, not by scorpions, but by imagery, the medium by which all human beings think at the deepest levels. And the kingdom which they seek to conquer and control is not just Scotland, but the kingdom of the mind. Imagery enlightens, but it also obscures. Imagery is loyal, but it also betrays. Imagery is visible on the surface, but manifests itself at hidden depths. Their mutual struggle to live in prose while thinking in imagery affects the two Macbeths in different ways. Well, here's the story of the novel, again in a summary. The story of my novel is the same as that of the Shakespeare play, but presents Macbeth and Lady Macbeth in alternating chapters, in which they take part in the events of the Macbeth story and respond to those events in deepening imagery. Now, in Macbeth Video 1, the duet duel, I alternated the thoughts of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth as they are presented in the novel. But in order to keep that video to a reasonable length, I left out some of the passages of that cycle. As I listened to that video, it occurred to me that I should read the complete duet duel thoughts of each of the characters. So, I'm going to make this video, Video 4, the complete duet duel thoughts of Macbeth, and make another video, which will be Video 5, the complete duet duel thoughts of Lady Macbeth. Now, there are 4 duet duel passages in each chapter of the novel. However, if you listen for clues in these passages, you'll realize that the duet duel takes place during the time that Lady Macbeth is being watched during her sleepwalking episodes and before Macbeth's final battle with the forces of Macduff. A duet is harmony. A duel is disharmony. As you listen, you might well ask, which is the best description of the relationship between the two people at this stage in their relationship? You might also ask yourself, do they both speak these words to each other out loud? Or does one speak out loud and the other respond silently? Or do they both keep silent while thinking these thoughts about what their relationship has come to be? Well, here are Lord Macbeth's thoughts, or spoken words, in the duet duel cycle of the novel. So in chapter 1, we go to page 2, and these are thoughts amid all the other imagery. Like each chapter is about 3,000 words, and these are only 4 segments per chapter in which each character, Macbeth in this video, thinks in this duet duel mode. Here's Macbeth. I, too, thought of us as one from the earliest of days. One heart, one mind, one ambition. Our meeting was the encounter of my life. That walk in the meadow was the merging of our destinies. We agreed on all points, my love. We flowed as one strong current from that day. You were the only person to whom I could say what I was thinking. I was relieved that I could express my yearnings to you. You never flinched when you peered inside my thoughts. The attraction was like to like. The attraction was stone to stone. The attraction was fiery sword to fiery sword. You were swift with the gavel of judgment. You're kind to your frail old parents, but you judged them as you would judge a market horse. More alike were we than even you could have known. What you thought was a stable kingdom was built on sand. The kingdom of Scotland was no more secure than your father's throne. Feeble and tired was the old king, Malcolm. Unmanly and ascetic, my cousin, Duncan. Scotland needed a ferocious warrior to face her foes. I winced as these 2 feeble ones bowed down to foreign diplomats. simpering as they showed negotiators through Scotland's halls, bartering a fragile peace by offering stones from our castle walls. I thought of myself as their future replacement. Every moment was put in service to what was to be. I trained long and hard to be ready when that time came. I'm not the kind, as you know, my love, to talk about our marriage. What is mine, I lock away like royal jewels. Once secure, there need be no thought beyond a smile. I've always leaned towards action, curb the tongue and draw the sword. Can we agree that almost every word has been said? Better to talk about what we have learned. We've been through a lot together. We must glean whatever is possible from this stricken field. Then we skip chapter 2, which is Lady Macbeth and her possible answer, and go to chapter 3, Macbeth 2, page 18. Don't do anything rash, my love. Don't do anything rash at all. I have a prediction up my sleeve which will clear the air. I've been in battles where the blood was up to my ankles. I've been in battles where the mud was up to my knees. Every human affair is a tide which is bound to change. I've been pleased at how you beautified the castle. Those window boxes in the courtyard are a fine idea. The taste of Duncan and his wife was so plain and so dark. I knew from the day I was born that I would be king. Old King Malcolm was reaching his terminus. Duncan's colors were trailing in the race. I had no inclination to redeem my father's name. His name had rated no mention in the annals of fame. I was concerned with shaping the future, not the past. Every tournament I entered, every hunting party I joined, I saw as a test of my qualities as a future king. Banquo, Macduff, Malcolm, Donalbain, Lennox, Ross. I could barely refrain from chuckling when I measured their royal potential. Not one atom in all their beings bore the stamp of the future crown. One day, Banquo nicked me in the shoulder at the joint where the armor meets the helm. He begged me to call a halt, but I refused and battled back and won the exchange. Macduff acquired a new charger from a faraway bourne. He entered him in the list against my old roan. I won by a whisker, retired my roan, and acquired a new mount. My cousin Duncan was completely inept in the art of warfare. Banquo and Macduff were out of their depth when they trained with me. I was the natural leader of every youthful game. No, I don't despise you, love. You have done nothing to me that I haven't done to myself. Every creature we meet adds venom or milk to our veins. You have been a seminal midwife, taught me to walk, taught me to crawl, taught me to breathe. You encouraged me to thicken my carapace. You were the one who believed my dreams. How could you know that my dreams were hollow, as hollow as the tree that falls on the house? Excuse me. Skipping Lady Macbeth 2 and going on to Macbeth 3 on page 34. Remember that meadow we walked in that first time? Tomorrow, if the sun shines, we can try to locate it again. A trick of the landscape, I would say, has made it so hard to find. There will be days when we will walk in apple orchards, days when we'll feel the warmth of the sun on our backs. The three of us together, you and me and the boy. As for those traveling players, I had them silenced. I won't sit and watch tyrants being displayed on a stage. I won't watch depictions of kings or rebellions or strife. Then the old king fell ill. It was assumed that he was so far gone that he would not be recovering this time. People gathered for the watch from far and wide. It was agreed that old Malcolm's successor would be chosen by election. That was decreed as the wish of the dying king. Nothing was said, of course, as to who would vote for whom. When the old king died, I was as peaceful as if I'd been attending my own funeral. I was as content as the old man himself must have been at his laying out. I greeted everyone at old Malcolm's wake as if I was already his replacement as their king. Shortly before the election, 4 people came to see me: Banquo, Macduff, Lennox, and Ross. They said that they had agreed that they would not be voting for me. They sat at my table in the great hall at Dunsinane and gave me their thoughts. We must do what is best for Scotland, they said. Macbeth is the man of war, they said, while Duncan is the man of peace. After they had their say, I said not a word in reply. When they left, there were 4 knives in my back. When the time came, I never bothered to vote. I descended into a deep, dark pit. Venomous toads at the bottom of a well. Better for you, I said, that I make this journey alone. I was living at the edge of a desolate landscape, fishing a little at the banks of Acheron, saving pennies for the fare to the other side. Bloody puddles and the driving rain in the courtyards, blood-stained rushes where the dogs sniffed crumbs in the dining halls, blood-stained hands when I reached for the bread and the wine. Skipping Lady Macbeth 3, we go to Macbeth 4, page 50. As for sleeping and dreams and such, my love, I almost never sleep. I storm through the all-night scullery and catch the night watch napping. I have my horse saddled at midnight and go out for a ride. I don't believe in deepest thoughts, my love. There are none. If the puddles on my path were not shallow, I could not go on. As for looking every man in the kingdom in the eye, and every woman and child too, I might add, when you're a king of all the kingdom, you need not try. That night marked the return of my boyhood fits. I rolled around in the rushes with the dogs. You held me in your arms and rubbed my temples. I remember very little of Duncan's coronation. I attended, but can remember almost nothing at all. I was a man who had been hollowed out to the core. I felt your eyes on my back as I knelt in fealty to Duncan. All my ambitions gasping for life in the mud and the blood. You had seen inside my dream, and there was nothing there. The bonfires carried the news far and wide. Duncan had become the Scottish king. The man of war was held in shackles by the man of peace. How could they carry on with life as if nothing had happened? Banquo, Macduff, Malcolm, Lennox, Ross, how could they see me as anything other than a ghost? I walked and talked as a normal man. I wielded my sword in every friendly encounter with a vengeance that must have screamed. How could they fail to see the rage with which I boiled? I withdrew from you the day that Duncan was crowned. I had failed you in the thing that mattered most. Every seed that I had planted had failed to grow. A hollowness in the pit of my stomach, a raging fever in my brain. How could I look my wife now squarely in the eye? I sat by the fire. I stared at old Malcolm's tapestry. I went for long rides in the fog and the rain. Skipping Lady Macbeth 4. Excuse me again. and going to Macbeth 5, page 66. Talk of the future is not for me. I've learned to not think of the future. I find the present day enough of a challenge for me. I want a mind which is devoid of speculation. Yesterday is the bog behind me, tomorrow the hill ahead. You ask what would have become of us if we had never met? From such heights the wisest among us lose their footing and fall. Better for both of us to leave such questions aside. Our defences fell into disrepair. At every parley, Duncan gave a piece of Scotland away. I was almost relieved when the Norwegians invaded our shores. Duncan received much praise for sending MacDonald to parley with Sweno. All the thanes expressed their relief at the news of the accord with the invaders. Who remembers that I alone opposed the king? I faced Sweno on the beach and drove him back to Norway. I faced MacDonald eye to eye and gutted him from stem to stern. All of this to save my cousin's shrinking throne. I used to lie awake and stare at the ceiling. Were my victories making Duncan, the inadequate, look kingly? Was I moving myself further away from the crown? How wrong to think that my deeds stood out on their own, my valorous deeds and Duncan's failed diplomacy side by side. I was thunderstruck when Duncan made Malcolm the next king. Hours of brooding, my love, hours of commiserating with you. I used to ask the old dog what he thought I should do. I study you sometimes when you're asleep. Perhaps you study me when I'm asleep. Very few such moments come to either of us two. We have arrived at a fork in the road. Voices call to each of us. There's a force which seems to determine what we hear. There is the warp and there is the weft. We each of us have made our contribution. We have each chosen different threads for our tapestry. Skipping Lady Macbeth 5 and her possible reply, whether spoken or silent, we go to Macbeth 6, page 82. I'm worried about you, my love. Hence the doctor, hence the nurse, hence these other watchers of your welfare. Turn the peg of a musical instrument far beyond where it was designed to go, and the strings will snap. This is you, my love. This is you. We have become the cat and the dog. Each is a different form of being. Each has earned his rightful place by the warmth of the fire. Macduff, who praised my valor, supported Malcolm. Banquo, who had fought with me, supported Malcolm. Every thane had left a dagger in my back. To live in a Scotland devoid of hope? To live in a Scotland devoid of valor? These foolish thanes had drained my joy away. Duncan's sons were callow lightweights, neither warriors nor diplomats. The kingdom, now on its knees, would soon be prone. As for the murders, my dear, as for the series of gruesome murders, why try to treat a disease with no known cure? They would never have let us live. They would never have let us prosper. Duncan, Malcolm, Banquo, and Macduff, each one of them was sharpening his knife. I solved the Duncan problem. I solved the Banquo problem. In a day or two, I shall settle with Macduff. I had to look clear down to the bottom of my mind. I had to make an assessment of what I was and what I wanted to be. Then I snuffed out one candle and lit another. I only had to stifle half of myself. I didn't have to murder the whole being. There was a moment after which I was never the same. I was Glamis, and then I was Cotter. I was Cotter, and then I was king. I was Macbeth, and then I was Macbeth. Skipping Lady Macbeth 6 again, and going to Macbeth 7. I worry about you, my love. I worry about what will happen to you. I believe that there are terrible times ahead. We have looked after each other as best we can. We each have been parent, and we each have been child. I can think of no better husband nor better wife. Our umbilical cord is now severed. We are drifting off in the dark. Your voice grows faint to me, as my voice grows faint to you. Macduff is sharpening his knife. He wants England to fight his battles. His play is to cast young Malcolm aside and filch the throne. Macduff would never make a good king. He left his wife and his babes behind as hostages on the battlefield. How can such a man be fit to rule this land? If ever an arrow has hit its target, it is the campaign against Macduff. He is completely unprepared for such a level of savagery. I outbear the bear, outlion the lion, and out-tiger the tiger. So, what to say about the slaying of Lady Macduff, of the murder of Lady Macduff and her brood, of the slaughter of all the servants trapped in that house, of all his pretty ones and their dam, of all his pretty ones and their dam at one fell swoop. Yes, my love, my orders included all. An old lady came to see me. She had lost her sons in the skirmishes, every one. I told her that the losing of all one's sons is the price one justly pays for choosing to be loyal to the losing side. I've taken to sleeping on the floor at the foot of my throne, a sword and a dagger in my hands. I trust no guards, because guards will sleep and snore. I have no friends and wish to have none. I prefer my enemies ranged around me in the dark. I can see their eyes and their claws in the campfire's glow. I have lowered the action to a level that has left them paralyzed. Don't challenge Macbeth unless you are a Macbeth. Blood for blood, tooth for tooth, nail for nail. Skipping Lady Macbeth 7 and going on to Macbeth 8. Let me tell you about my day, my love. It is not what I expected my life to be, not what I once saw as the routine agenda of a king. I attend hangings, sometimes a dozen a day. I supervise the raising of heads on pikes, even boys across the line. There was a lad the other day. I gave the nod and had him put away. The clock makes a sound like a booming drum. The fire crackles like a thunderstorm. My eyes feel like they are bleeding, and my eardrums ache. There was a crowned scarecrow and a hangman's noose on the hillside. As I rode near Dunsinane, I was too bone-weary to order a scourge of the countryside. I don't look forward to seeing the sun rise. I don't rejoice as the sun goes down. The blackest night with the fewest stars is what pleases me now. I keep myself busy, hearing reports from all my spies. I have a spy in every house throughout the land. I even have spies in England, just to be sure. I have spies who report to spies who report to me. I have spies who spy on the spies who spy on the spies. You, my love, and I are the only two humans on earth whom I never doubt. I only have one item in my plans. It is to unseam Macduff from the nave to the chaps. Beyond that, I have no further plans. Do we forge pathways through the murk of life, or does life itself direct us to certain paths? What determines where each footstep eventually falls? I determined that I would always look straight ahead, whatever the meadow or thicket which lay in my path, to be the captain who never deviates from the course. Some swim in pristine streams, some swim in rivers of blood. Each is trying to get to the other side. Then we skip Lady Macbeth 8 and we go to Macbeth 9, which is chapter 17, which is the last chapter in the novel and the last, of course, Macbeth chapter. And he mentions two images, and each gets two segments. So there's 4 segments in this chapter, as in all chapters. Page 130. You know, I was just a boy at the time, and my father was a thane, and the king at that time was old Malcolm, Duncan's predecessor. And my father was getting old. I was a child of a late life birth, and it was the only time he ever talked in this way. My father was the king's chief falconer. He organized the gamekeepers and the birds. We were testing out conditions for the king's next hunt. The first time, they told me that I was too young, my father said. The second time, they told me that I was too old. Then he held out his arm with the falcon beneath the hood. It was a beautiful summer's day. The dogs were waiting to flush the smaller birds from the thickets. Falcons will circle above the fields and await their prey. I've often wondered what might have been, my father said. The falcon left his arm and began its circular climb. Well, there are other things in life than being a king. Well, that's one image in 2 segments. Here's the final image from Macbeth in the duet duel. 2 segments. There was a man stretched out on the rack. He had been captured and beaten and starved, and he had been laid out on the rack, and his limbs had been stretched. He had been like this for days, perhaps a week. Every day they tightened the rack a little more. His face was swollen, and one eye was closed. Many of his bones had been snapped. The trick is that you never break the skin. And the torturers were asking him questions. What was his knowledge about Macduff? And at every denial, they would give him a jolt of pain. And I stood behind the shoulder of the master torturer, and this man, with one eye, looked straight through to the back of my skull. And I knew that he had told everything he had known. I'm sure there's more he can tell, I said. I'm sure he's about to crack. I clapped the torturer on the shoulder and left the cell. And that's the duet duel, but in a moment I'll make a few comments and a conclusion. So that's the duet duel from Macbeth's point of view, Macbeth only, but as I said, the chapters are about 3,000 words each, and there's maybe 50, 60 images in every chapter. So here are a couple of other images in that final chapter. Not part of the duet duel, but images illuminate one another, they even compete with one another. So here's a couple of images from that final chapter. Images in the mind of Macbeth. Ordered to lower myself to the ground. Kneel, tyrant, kneel. My feet kicked out from under me. I roll around and raise myself up on my knees, refusing to kiss young Malcolm's feet. A rain of blows, but I will not yield. Malcolm's muddy boots upon my back. He would never have dared when his father was alive. One blow from me and he would have been choking in blood. Behold the fate of the tyrant. How my father would have rejoiced. We shall exhibit him all over Scotland. Behold my human footstool. Macbeth shall be my footstool in every town. Well, that's one image in the mind of Macbeth. Here's the very final image, and it draws on the Shakespeare play, of course. Time to end this exhausting spectacle. The battlefield reeks of dismembered corpses. Horses and men all stink alike as rotting flesh. The army stand and watch the Titans, waiting to ascertain where their future loyalties will lie. I will not yield. My friend is breathing heavily. There's blood above his left eye. He keeps his dagger hand too low, the fault of a novice. For such small flaws, my friend, we pay a heavy price. I will try the last. I see a tiny opening. Macbeth's weight is on his back foot. I'm exhausted, but I summon up strength from deep inside. Lay on, Macduff. The righteous arrow always has the truest flight. I grunt and give my sword a mighty heave. Well, okay, I'd like to read a passage from one of my notes. I'll tell you how you can access those notes in a minute. The Macbeth who emerged for me in my contemplation of the play and my planning and writing of the novel is quite a fascinating paradox. It is here in the first image unit of this minor cycle, in this chapter, as he says, I want a mind which is devoid of speculation. Excuse me. Of course, all minds speculate, and all minds think on many levels at once, from the most conscious to the least conscious levels of thinking, and from many points of view. So the claim that he does not wish to speculate is embedded in a minor cycle of what I would call speculation about his marriage and the kingship in 9 Macbeth chapters of perhaps 25,000 words. Half the novel is Macbeth speculating, though he says he doesn't. The conscious mind is selective, so he is being logical within his own understanding of the word speculation, but the subconscious mind, on which this novel also draws, as it ranges across the entire spectrum of conscious to subconscious thinking, is very active in speculation about his situation. I've said many times that in order to write the best possible novels, I try to be in as close touch with my subconscious creative mind as is possible. I would say that this is the task, whether accepted consciously or not, or even rejected as perhaps in this instance, of all my main characters. And I think of all the characters of serious literature, the task is to reach down into your subconscious mind as far as it is possible to do. The Shakespeare innovation, as I understand it, is to show on the surface of the text, by the language of poetry, the entire range of thinking in the human mind. I've taken this as my own premise and have developed techniques which are designed to allow me to write in that vein. Now, the novel is, hold it up here, Lord and Lady Macbeth, Full of Scorpions is My Mind, a novel by John Passfield. It's available on Amazon. It's also available at my publisher's website, rocksmillspress.com, rocksmillspress.com. There's more information there. Now, to access 2 full-length books, which I wrote while writing this novel and polishing this novel, go to johnpassfield.ca, my website, click on Notebooks, and go down to the Macbeth icon for free, book length, my notebook on this novel. If you go to Journals on the same website, johnpassfield.ca, click on Journals, go down to the icon. There's my journal, a free book-length book that I wrote while polishing the novel. And now I'm going to repeat a request that I made in video 1. I enjoy reading, but I would love to be able to watch a video in which another person, Lord Macbeth, speaks these same lines. The words are copyright, I wrote them, but I would gladly grant permission, with no money being required, for someone else to read them in a video which I can post. If you are interested, please email me at johnpassfieldnovels, novels plural with an S, at gmail.com, and we will discuss it. Lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video.